No 1K double row wasn't human at all. The colony world of Halcyon was never meant to feel like home. The sky stayed a dull copper color even at dawn, and the wind carried fine dust that crept into every crack and lung. Still, humans survived. They built domes, towers, and long steel roads across the plains. They planted crops in glass fields and learned which creatures to fear and which to study. Survival became routine, and routine slowly turned into pride. On the 10th year of settlement, the colony held a public gathering. Lights were strung between towers. Music played from old Earth speakers. Children ran through the crowd while adults talked about progress, trade, and the future. For one night, Halcyon felt almost warm. Near the central platform stood a small girl. She wore a simple gray dress and a thin metal crown that looked like a toy bent into shape by hand. It rested loosely on her dark hair. She was shorter than most children her age, with pale skin that never seemed burned by the harsh sun. Her feet were bare on the metal floor, yet she did not flinch. Most people passed her without a second glance. They assumed she was part of the ceremony, maybe a symbol of hope or a child mascot chosen by the council. Some thought she was an orphan adopted by the colony. Her name, according to the public registry, was Lyra. No family listed, no place of birth recorded. Just a date of arrival that matched the colony's founding year. Lyra stood still, hands folded in front of her, eyes calm as she watched the crowd. A human officer named Rianne noticed her because she was not acting like a child. She did not fidget or smile or grow bored. She watched everything with quiet focus, as if every sound mattered. "You lost, kid?" Ryan asked gently, crouching down. Lyra looked at him. Her eyes were dark, reflecting the lights above. "No," she said. Her voice was soft, clear, and oddly steady. Rianne smiled. "You here with someone?" She shook her head. "They are all here." Before he could ask what she meant, a loud cheer rose from the crowd. Fireworks burst above the dome, painting the ceiling with light. When Rianne looked back, the girl had already turned away, her attention back on the celebration. Rianne felt a strange chill and stood up, telling himself he was tired. Across the platform, a group of alien diplomats watched the event. They were tall, thin beings with layered skin that shifted color as they spoke. They had come to observe humanity's progress and decide whether deeper trade was worth the effort. One of them, an analyst named Voyage, scanned the crowd with a handheld sensor. He was bored until the device flickered and gave a sharp warning tone. He frowned and scanned again. The signal vanished. Voyage adjusted the settings and slowly swept the area. When the scanner passed over the small crowned girl, it shut down completely. "That is odd," he muttered. His companion glanced at the child. Human young. God? Decoration. Voyage was not convinced.
"My device failed. Faulty tool," the companion replied. "Ignore it." Voyage did not ignore it.
As the night continued, a sudden power drop hit the colony. Lights dimmed. Music cut off. A low alarm echoed through the dome. People froze, then began to panic. Technicians rushed toward the control center. Ryan moved to help guide civilians. Through the noise and confusion, Lyra stepped away from the crowd. She walked calmly toward a sealed maintenance wall near the platform. No one noticed her. No one stopped her. She placed her small hand against the cold metal. For a brief moment, the crown on her head gave off a faint inner glow. Deep beneath the colony, systems that had been locked for years rebooted. Energy rerouted with perfect efficiency. The alarm cut out. Lights returned, brighter than before. The entire outage lasted less than 6 seconds. Cheers erupted. People laughed in relief, praising the engineers for their fast work. The engineers stared at their screens in confusion. Ryan looked toward the maintenance wall. He thought he saw the girl walking back into the crowd, her crown dull and harmless again. Later that night, Varesh reviewed colony records in his quarters. He pulled data from every major incident on Halcyon. Storms that should have destroyed crops, creatures that turned away at the last moment, systems that performed far beyond design limits. A single figure appeared in every location log. Lyra. Varesh's skin shifted to a deep warning hue. She has no biological markers, he whispered after another scan. No thermal variants, no decay patterns. He requested access to deeper human archives and was denied. Outside, the copper sky darkened. Somewhere beneath the stars, the small crowned girl sat alone on the edge of the platform, feet dangling, watching the colony lights flicker with quiet satisfaction. No one knew what she was. Not yet. Did not sleep. He stayed in the alien observation deck, looking at data streams and the human colony below. Every small movement, every minor accident, every victory humans had was marked by the presence of a small girl with a crown. She appeared in historical security footage, in mission logs, in accident reports. She was always there, calm, watching, sometimes intervening without anyone noticing. He began to notice patterns. The first storms that should have swept away crops coincided with her presence in the fields. When a native predator attacked human settlements, it always stopped when she appeared nearby. Machinery failures fixed themselves when she walked past control rooms. Her actions seemed simple, ordinary, yet results were extraordinary. Varesh could not explain it with science or logic. He tried recalibrating sensors, comparing life signs, even analyzing structural data. Every measurement returned strange results. Lyra's body did not match human biology, yet she moved like a child. Her voice, when she spoke, resonated differently, causing small vibrations in nearby machinery. She left no physical traces, no fingerprints, no heat, no energy signature, but something about her affected the world around her. Meanwhile, Lyra moved through the colony as always, unnoticed. She visited the labs, watched technicians repair engines, and sometimes lingered near soldiers practicing maneuvers. Nobody stopped her. They assumed she was just a child playing among adults. But when a sudden reactor surge threatened to explode the colony's main generator, she appeared, and, without touching any controls, the reactor stabilized. Engineers stared in confusion, calling it a miracle or luck. A young engineer, Kale, who had seen her save the reactor, finally approached her. "How did you do that?" he asked quietly. She looked at him with wide eyes. "I just watched. I knew where to step." Her voice was calm, almost emotionless. Kale frowned. "You're no ordinary child. Something is different about you." She did not answer and walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. Varesh requested a private meeting with human administrators. He wanted full access to her records to understand what the humans had done with her. They were hesitant, citing privacy and protection policies. Varesh insisted. He warned them that ignoring the anomaly could be dangerous for both humans and aliens. The administrators agreed, but only partially. Varesh was given limited access to observation footage and colony logs. Even this small window was enough to convince him that the girl was not human. He marked her as a high-priority anomaly and began sending encrypted reports to his superiors. One evening, as Lyra wandered near the outer dome, A small group of alien scouts attempted to approach her. They wanted to analyze her directly. They were careful, silent, moving slowly to avoid alarming the humans. Lyra noticed them before they could act. She turned her head slightly, and a low hum filled the air. The scouts stopped mid-step, their equipment malfunctioning. They dropped their devices and backed away, confused. Back in the observation deck, Varish reviewed the recordings. Every time she sensed a threat, her eyes glowed briefly, like a faint pulse. The equipment near her failed. Nothing in his records explained this. He labeled the phenomenon as unidentified directive influence. Humans around her continued to assume she was a quiet, observant child. They celebrated small victories, never noticing her presence. Some engineers and soldiers began to suspect something strange, but no one spoke openly. Rumors circulated quietly. Perhaps she had some rare talent, or maybe she was lucky. No one considered that she might not be human at all. One night, a severe electrical storm approached the colony. The system predicted total power loss, flooding, and structural damage. Everyone panicked, running to shelters and reinforcing domes. Lyra walked calmly toward the storm's path, as if drawn by it. The wind howled, metal groaned, and lightning cracked. Humans could only watch. When she reached the center of the storm, a strange calm spread. Lightning avoided her path. Gusts softened, and the storm moved away from the colony entirely. People cheered, believing it was luck or timing. Baresh, however, watched quietly from his ship. The data showed that the storm had been redirected with precision beyond any known technology. Only one entity had been present, Lyra. As Varesh prepared to report his findings, he noticed that her movements were intentional, not random. She studied humans, predicted outcomes, and adjusted situations subtly. His mind raced. Was she a weapon? An intelligence? Or something else entirely? He realized he could not answer the question without interacting directly, but every attempt to approach her failed. She was aware, cautious, and powerful beyond comprehension. Even within the human colony, some began to sense her importance. Kale, the engineer, suggested she be given an official role in safety operations. The administrators declined, citing ethical concerns. She's a child, they said, but Kale knew she was more than that. He often watched her silently, noticing how systems and events seemed to bend around her presence. Late one night, Varesh sent another encrypted message to his superiors. He included recordings of the storm incident, the reactor stabilization, and other anomalies. He wrote, "This child is not human. She possesses an intelligence and directive capability far beyond our understanding. Immediate observation and caution recommended." Somewhere in the galaxy, another intelligence received the alert and began calculating risk. Lyra had already noticed in her quiet way the observation. She did not fear it. She only studied, learning about the observers, preparing for the next steps, though nobody yet knew what that might be. The colony went to sleep, tired but safe. Lyra sat alone on a balcony, small crown glinting faintly under the copper sky. She watched the stars, her mind silent yet calculating. Every human around her unaware of the truth. Every alien observer wondering if the anomaly was a weapon. And in the quiet, the child who was not human waited, patient and calm, for the world to catch up to what she already knew. The small crowned girl was not sleeping. She had moved to the central plaza after the storm, wandering quietly among the empty benches and fountains. Lights flickered from the tall towers, and the wind carried the faint scent of alien flora cultivated by humans. Everything was silent except for the occasional hum of energy from the colony's reactors. She walked slowly, carefully, as though feeling the world around her. Flashbacks, fragments of memory, appeared in her mind. A pyod. She had been created, designed to observe civilizations. She was not born, but deployed. She remembered the silence of the void before any life reached maturity. She remembered watching countless species fail themselves. Most species destroyed their own potential, unable to survive the smallest threat without collapse. She had been instructed to intervene only when necessary, to guide without ruling, to ensure survival without dominance. Her crown was not a decoration. It was a command interface, limiting her full abilities. Only in rare circumstances, when she determined the species she watched had potential beyond immediate understanding, could it unlock fully. Humans had not yet reached the threshold, but they were close. Their cooperation, their ability to protect and trust even the unknown, had surprised her. Meanwhile, Varesh analyzed more data. He noticed small changes in the colony after each human crisis. Systems performed beyond design. Storms redirected. Animals avoided humans. Small acts of heroism, usually dismissed as chance, coincided with the girl's presence. He compared the timing of each anomaly with her recorded locations. It matched perfectly. Every single event she was present for produced outcomes far beyond normal limits. Varesh decided to test her. He sent a small team of scouts, dressed in unassuming uniforms, to approach her when the colony was unaware. They carried handheld scanners and minimal energy shields, intending only to observe and record. They approached slowly, trying to appear casual. The girl noticed them before they reached her. Her crown shimmered faintly. A low pulse emitted from her crown. The scouts froze in place. Their equipment malfunctioned. Screens flickered. Shields failed. They tried to back away, but they could not move quickly. Finally, one managed to stumble backward, accidentally shutting down his scanner. The team regrouped, confused and frightened. They left quietly, reporting nothing to the humans. The girl had not touched them. They had not touched her, yet her presence alone had disrupted their technology. Back in the observation deck, Varesh watched the recordings repeatedly. Every time she reacted to a threat, her eyes glowed briefly, a faint but unmistakable light. The technology nearby failed, recalibrated, or performed in ways that defied logic. His notes filled with terms like unidentified influence and directive anomaly. He realized she could manipulate outcomes without physical contact, without conscious effort from humans. It was subtle, yet powerful. Humans, meanwhile, continued to assume she was just a child. Kale, the engineer, tried to explain to colleagues that she might be more than she seemed, but most laughed nervously, unwilling to believe. They treated her as a quiet, lucky child who wandered into crises and emerged unscathed. Nobody could deny her impact on events, but the explanation remained luck or coincidence. Lyra herself did not mind. She did not crave attention or praise. She studied humans, learning their reactions, noticing patterns, calculating probabilities. Each small act of human bravery or collaboration impressed her. She noted how they helped each other in crises, how they did not harm her despite being ignorant of her abilities. She began to understand that this species was different. They had potential that no other species she observed had shown. One evening, a minor breach occurred in the outer dome. Ah? Atmospheric pressure began to drop. Alarms blared, and panic spread. Soldiers ran to secure the area. Engineers tried to stabilize the pressure, and civilians were ushered into safe zones. The girl walked calmly toward the breach. She did not touch any equipment, yet the seal reformed. Air pressure stabilized. No human intervention was responsible. Only the girl had been present. Those who saw it could not explain it, calling it a miracle or luck. Varej, still observing, became increasingly worried. He realized the colony's safety relied more on her than any technology. His reports grew urgent, warning that humans might not understand the danger or the advantage of her presence. The question remained, was she a weapon, a guardian, or something else entirely? He could not answer. All he knew was that her existence defied their understanding of biology, technology, and strategy. In quiet moments, Lyra reflected on her observations. She had seen countless species, most failing. Humans had survived on Halcyon against impossible odds, not because of technology alone, but because they protected her unknowingly. They assumed she was a small child, helpless and human. In fact, they were the ones learning from her. The quiet cooperation, trust, and resilience they displayed were remarkable. Her crown pulsed faintly as if acknowledging the patterns she had observed. The interface that restricted her powers remained mostly closed, but the data she collected allowed her to plan future interventions. The humans had not reached the level for full guidance, but they were close. She decided to wait, continue watching, continue testing, and subtly influencing outcomes when necessary. Varej's concerns grew. He began sending encrypted messages to his superiors, detailing every anomaly, every incident, every strange interaction. He warned them that the child might be more than human, that her abilities could impact the balance of power in the galaxy. Some intelligence agencies began to take notice, but they did not yet understand the full scope of her capabilities. Meanwhile, humans remained unaware. They continued with their routines, celebrating small victories, managing resources, and training their children. The colony's survival depended on teamwork and, unknowingly, on the small crowned girl who wandered among them. She had become a quiet center, observing, calculating, guiding without anyone knowing. On the 10th anniversary of the colony's founding, Lyra returned to the central plaza. She stood alone under the copper sky, crown glinting faintly in the lights. Humans celebrated around her, oblivious to her true nature. Varej watched from his ship, trying to predict her next action. The girl, patient and calm, waited, watching, learning, and preparing. The colony thrived, not knowing that the smallest presence among them was not human, and yet more powerful than anyone could imagine. Lyra had disappeared. One morning, the central plaza was empty where she had stood for years. Her small crown gleamed faintly in the early sun, left behind as if nothing had happened. Panic spread quietly among those who had seen her last, though most dismissed it as a child wandering off. The administrators tried to locate her quickly, activating all scanners and security personnel. No trace of her appeared. It was as if she had vanished from the world. Humans reacted strangely. Instead of chaos, there was cooperation. Soldiers left their posts to help search. Engineers abandoned projects temporarily to scan the colony's outer edges. Even rival groups, who normally competed for resources, worked together to find her. Civilians assisted, organizing search parties and offering supplies. They were united by something deeper than fear. It was a quiet trust that the girl, though missing, mattered. Aliens observing the colony grew alarmed. They had assumed she was a minor anomaly, an unimportant child. Now, without her presence, the colony's vulnerabilities were clear. Sensors failed to explain how the humans would respond. Their actions were unpredictable. The aliens debated whether to capture her, eliminate her, or observe further. Each choice carried risk. If humans discovered her nature, their reaction could be catastrophic. They were cautious, hesitant, and nervous in ways the girl had never been. Meanwhile, Lyra herself was awake and aware. She had chosen to disappear, leaving the colony in the hands of those she had quietly guided for years. She observed the aliens' attempts to find her, studying them with patient calculation. She understood their technology, their strategies, and their weaknesses. Yet she did not act aggressively. She was not a weapon. She was a test, a guardian who allowed the humans to rise. Back in the colony, Kale led a small team into the outer sections of Halcyon, where old communication arrays and abandoned equipment remained. They followed subtle traces, slight shifts in energy, faint vibrations that only someone who knew Lyra well could notice. They discovered nothing at first, but they did not give up. Each human movement, each small coordinated effort, demonstrated a level of unity and determination that the aliens had underestimated. It was Lyra's influence, indirect but powerful, guiding them without overt intervention. The aliens grew bolder, sending small ships to probe areas where she might be hiding. Lyra responded not with violence but with precision. Systems malfunctioned, engines shut down, sensors misread, and every attempt to reach her ended in failure. She did not harm any alien directly. She merely caused their own machines to resist them. Her control over technology and energy around her was subtle, elegant, and terrifying. They began to realize that she was far more than a child, or even a human-like intelligence. She was something else entirely. Humans continued searching, unaware of the invisible battles around them. Kale felt the oddest sense that Lyra was near, guiding him silently. Every obstacle in the search became easier. Paths cleared, technology responded as if directed. Small warnings prevented danger. Kale and his team never noticed it directly, but the pattern was unmistakable. Days passed, and the colony grew restless, yet disciplined. Humans were displaying resilience that no observer, human or alien, had predicted. Alien fleets that tried to monitor or intercept human movement were met with unexpected coordination. Lyra watched, silent and calculating. She recognized that the species she had quietly guided had surpassed the point where direct intervention was needed. Her presence had been the spark, but humanity's unity was now the flame. Finally, during a routine patrol near the edge of the colony's dome, Kale spotted a faint shimmer in the distance. The air vibrated slightly, an almost imperceptible pulse. He approached carefully. There she was, sitting quietly on a small ridge, crown glinting faintly in the copper sky. Her expression was calm, almost indifferent, but her presence radiated quiet power. He could feel it without understanding it. She did not speak immediately. Kale stared, unsure what to say. The crown pulsed once, then dimmed, as if acknowledging him. It was enough. He understood that she had allowed this reunion, that she had observed everything, guided the humans, and now returned at her discretion. The colony's people noticed the return of the girl subtly. She did not announce herself. She did not take command, but those who had been part of the search, and those who observed carefully, realized something profound. Humans were no longer dependent on her direct presence. They had learned, grown, and cooperated beyond expectation. Lyra had tested them, disappeared to observe their response, and confirmed their resilience. She had chosen not to guide through fear or force, but through example and patience. The aliens, still watching, took note as well. The child who was not human had disappeared and returned without harming humans. She had manipulated outcomes, guided civilization, and avoided conflict, all without revealing her true abilities. Now they understood that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or technology, but their capacity to trust, adapt, and cooperate. In quiet moments, Lyra looked at the stars, considering the vastness of space and the countless other civilizations she had observed. Many had failed. Humans had succeeded where others had collapsed. Her crown pulsed faintly, a signal to herself, acknowledging the success. She had chosen this species not because they were perfect, but because they had potential she had rarely seen. She would continue to watch, but now she could rely on them to guide themselves. The colony remained unaware of the invisible threads that had guided their survival, but they thrived. And somewhere beyond the copper sky, Lyra, the small crowned girl who was not human, observed, patient and quiet, ready to intervene only when truly necessary. Lyra observed the galaxy quietly. Her crown, small and unassuming, rested lightly on her head, containing systems that could influence stars and machines beyond imagination. Yet, she had not used them openly. She had already tested humanity in ways few could comprehend. The aliens who had tried to capture or harm her were now wary, realizing that she was beyond weaponization, beyond control. She was a presence, patient and calculating, ensuring her species of choice, humans, was prepared for what the galaxy could throw at them. Back on Halcyon, the humans noticed the subtle differences in their lives without realizing the source. Crop yields were higher, machinery performed more efficiently, and coordination in emergency drills improved beyond expectations. Engineers, soldiers, and scientists began trusting each other in ways that had previously been unimaginable. It was as if the colony itself had grown smarter, more efficient, more capable. Lyra had guided them, not by commands or force, but by presence, observation, and quiet influence. Baresh remained on the observation deck, frustrated and intrigued. He had begun to understand that Lyra's abilities were not destructive in nature. She did not seek domination. She did not manipulate humans for personal gain. She observed, intervened only when necessary, and tested the species she protected. Her crown was a limit, a restraint that even she had to respect. It ensured that her actions were subtle, that humans could grow on their own. One day, alien scouts attempted another incursion near the colony. They were more careful this time, testing the boundaries of Lyra's influence. Lyra appeared on the ridge, just beyond the colony's outer dome. She did not approach them, yet systems nearby failed. Sensors went dark, and communication arrays jammed. The aliens could not approach safely, and they did not understand why. Every device they used turned against them in subtle, inexplicable ways. They withdrew, fearful and frustrated. Within the colony, Kale and his team noticed strange energy readings, but they could not identify the source. They saw improvements in efficiency and subtle guidance in disaster response. Systems operated with precision. Humans made decisions with speed and accuracy that exceeded normal training. They could not explain it, but the effect was undeniable. Lyra's observations continued. She watched humans navigate crises, negotiate, and cooperate. Every small action she had encouraged, every moment of patience, every subtle guidance, was building a species capable of facing challenges far greater than Halcyon. She saw the spark of potential, the first signs of a civilization that could reach beyond its small colony, and she measured them not by brute strength, but by their ability to learn, to trust, to act with intelligence. Varesh, growing more anxious, sent another encrypted report. He highlighted the subtle influence and the repeated failures of alien technology when the girl was present. He wrote about her non-human biology, her effect on energy and machinery, and her influence on human behavior. Every observation pointed to a being of extraordinary power, yet she remained passive, almost benevolent in her actions. Her intelligence was calculated, deliberate, and patient. Meanwhile, the humans, still unaware of her true nature, continued thriving. Lyra ensured that the colony's systems and people were protected. She did not act as a ruler. She did not demand loyalty. Her power was silent, invisible, and infinitely more effective than force. She had shown the humans how to survive, how to cooperate, how to become stronger, and then stepped back to let them grow on their own. The aliens, observing cautiously, began to understand that direct interference would provoke an unpredictable response. They realized that the humans were no longer merely a species to manipulate or control. They were guided by an intelligence they could not comprehend, and every action against them carried unknown risks. Lyra, small, crowned, and patient, sat atop a ridge overlooking the colony. The sun reflected off her crown. She considered the galaxy, the countless civilizations she had observed, and the few that had shown promise. Humans were among the rare exceptions. They were adaptable, cooperative, capable of trust, and willing to act for the benefit of the group. She measured them quietly, knowing that her guidance had been subtle yet decisive. She had chosen the right species. In the quiet moments, she reflected on her mission. Her crown pulsed faintly, a sign of her inner systems monitoring outcomes, analyzing behavior, predicting probabilities. The humans had not yet reached full potential, but the foundation was laid. They could survive and thrive on their own now. Her role was shifting from direct influence to silent observation, ready to intervene only if necessary. Varesh, still reporting, could only marvel at what he witnessed. Lyra was not a weapon. She was a guardian, a test, and an enigma. Her influence went beyond anything recorded, measured, or understood. The humans thrived, the aliens hesitated, and Lyra remained calm, patient, and silent, preparing for a future she alone could foresee. The colony had grown stronger, faster, and more capable than anyone expected. Systems performed efficiently. Humans acted with unity, intelligence, and resilience. They solved problems together, adapted to disasters, and managed resources beyond previous expectations. It was not luck. It was guidance, subtle and invisible, provided by the small crowned girl who had remained calm, patient, and watchful. Lyra returned to the central plaza, not to claim power, but to observe the results of her work. She sat quietly, crown resting lightly on her head, eyes reflecting the copper sky above. Humans continued their routines, unaware of the influence that had shaped them. Engineers adjusted machinery, soldiers practiced drills, and children ran through the plaza. Everything thrived without direct interference, proving the success of her subtle guidance. Varesh watched from his observation deck, his reports filled with data that could not fully explain the girl's abilities. Lyra was not human, not in biology or intelligence, and yet she acted with restraint. She had guided the colony without domination, ensured survival without threat, and tested the species without coercion. Varesh realized that humanity had been chosen, and the choice was deliberate. The crown on her head was a limiter, a device to keep her influence measured, to allow the humans to grow independently. Alien factions observed cautiously, unsure how to proceed. Their technology, designed to dominate or control, failed repeatedly when near Lyra. They recognized that direct action against humans could provoke outcomes beyond comprehension. Lyra's quiet presence had transformed the humans into a species capable of surviving challenges that no alien had predicted. Within the colony, subtle changes were apparent. Humans communicated more efficiently, responded faster to emergencies, and worked together with trust and intelligence. It was as if the colony had developed a collective awareness, a consciousness built not on instructions, but on example. Lyra's subtle influence had taught them to cooperate, to act intelligently, to trust one another and themselves. One evening, the colony gathered under the copper sky for a celebration. Lights shimmered across the towers, music played softly, and children ran freely. Lyra walked among them, silent, watching. She did not command attention or seek recognition. Her presence was gentle, almost invisible, yet every person felt a faint sense of security and confidence. They did not understand why, but it was real. Varesh reviewed his latest reports. He could describe the anomalies, the effects, the coincidences, but he could not explain the source. He realized that Lyra's power was not destructive or overt. It was influence, subtle, intelligent, and precise. She had guided humans toward cooperation, resilience, and self-reliance without forcing the outcomes. Her crown had ensured that her interventions remained minimal, measured, and indirect. Lyra reflected on her work. She had observed countless civilizations, most of which failed themselves. Humans were rare exceptions. They had potential. They had learned, adapted, and thrived under pressure. She had not forced them, controlled them, or manipulated them in obvious ways. She had tested, guided, and allowed them to discover their own strength. Now she could step back, confident that the colony could continue to grow independently. The galaxy, too, took notice. Alien factions, once confident in their superiority, now reconsidered their strategies. Humans, though still young in galactic terms, had become an unpredictable, capable species. Lyra's influence had created a civilization that could not easily be dominated or destroyed. Her presence, subtle yet decisive, ensured that humanity was no longer vulnerable, but respected, feared, and unpredictable. As night fell, Lyra stood on a ridge overlooking the colony. Her crown glinted faintly under the copper sky. She considered the countless stars, the civilizations she had observed, and the rare species she had chosen to guide. Humans had passed her test. They had grown, adapted, and thrived. They had learned to trust, cooperate, and act intelligently. The crown on her head dimmed, locking away her godlike authority once more. Not because she had to, but because humanity no longer needed to be guided from the shadows. Her role had been fulfilled, her patience rewarded. She could observe silently, ready to intervene only when necessary. Somewhere in the galaxy, other dormant crowns pulsed faintly. Lyra's work had not ended. The universe was vast, full of potential and challenge, but for now, Halcyon thrived. Humans thrived. The small, crowned girl who was not human had done her work, not through force, but through guidance, trust, and quiet intelligence. And as she watched the stars, she smiled faintly, knowing that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy.